Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have tuned in here to today's episode of the Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I am your host, the one and only Todd Huff, behind the microphone here today. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to talk about the media today. There's two things in the media that I find quite interesting, and I want to go through them with you. First, well, they're not necessarily in order. Jen Psaki admits that MSNBC is the place that people go for negative Trump coverage, which is an incredible thing to listen to someone in the media admit and almost seemingly be proud of. So that's out there. And there's a podcast by Dwight K. Schrute. Now, it's done by Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight K. Schrute on The Office. I am a fan of The Office. With all due respect to Rainn Wilson, I do not mean this in any negative way. He will always be Dwight K. Schrute to me. Kind of like Jason Alexander will always be George Costanza to me. So it doesn't mean that they're not even good actors. It just means that that character, it's hard to get that out of their mind. They played it so well. It was such a good character, such an interesting, series, whether it was Seinfeld or The Office. Anyway, he's out there. He had an interview, a conversation with Stephanie Ruhle of MSNBC that I want to play a clip of that for you. He actually holds her a little bit accountable to some of the ridiculous nonsense that she is saying, because the media is, in fact, one of the 7 pillars of propaganda that has been used to deceive and mislead the American people for a long, long time, my friends. That's where we're headed today. Appreciate you joining us. I want to talk with you really quickly, though. If you are in sales, let me ask you a question. Are you where you want to be in your career? Whether you're struggling to close deals or you just want to sharpen your skills, Matt Easton and Easton University is here to help you. So, they have a sales training system. It's not cookie cutter. They have a system, a process. They've got training videos. It's really, really well done. My team and I have gone through this, and it's good stuff. But they've also got group coaching calls that you can jump on twice a week where they address questions and concerns from the community. It's really, really good stuff, really effective. They're here to help you be as good as you possibly can with the sales process. And if you follow Matt's system, it's going to pay off. It will pay off, but you have to take that first step, my friends. Visit toddhuffshow.com/Easton, EASTON, to find out more information. And if you sign up to join Easton University through our website, you will get a bonus welcome call from Matt Easton himself. He's going to do kind of a diagnostic, get to know you, understand your situation, your scenario, and help you get up and running, hit the ground going as quickly as possible so that you can improve your sales and make this thing pay for itself as quickly as possible. toddhuffshow.com/Easton. Do not let this opportunity pass you by, my friends. Invest in yourself. You are worth it. If you get the training down and you put it into practice, it will pay off. All right, so let's start. Where do I want to start? I guess I want to start. I'm going to start with Jen Psaki. Now, I don't have a soundbite for this. I'm just going to kind of summarize and read a bit of a story. The dailyfetched.com is where we've gotten this. Actually, just dailyfetched.com. MSNBC's Jen Psaki makes stunning admission on networks Trump coverage. That's the headline written by Jason Walsh. This was yesterday. I just want to read a bit of this. In one sense, it's not surprising, but in another sense, to hear someone who is working for a media outlet, it's quite remarkable. I think before we say this, let me say this before we talk about Jen Psaki in particular and her comments. Let's really quickly, and you know this, but let's just hit the high points in case someone's tuned in here today who doesn't even know what the media is or who the press is. The media. The media is supposed to be, you want to be a journalist. This is something else I remember Rush talking about in the past. He said when he started hearing people explain the reasons for wanting to get into journalism, things like they wanted to change the world. He said, I knew we were in trouble because if you want to change the world, you actually, media is sharing what's happening in the world. Now, on the one hand, you could say if you break a story like Watergate, for example, which is what many in the media hope to do, to break a story that brings down a Republican president or whatever. And listen, I'm not against it. If it's a legit story, it needs to be told, right? But if it's a fabricated, made-up story, that's another thing altogether. A lot of folks in media look at the Watergate scandal, the way that it was broken, the way that we, at least at the time, thought it was broken. They wanted us, they've been in search of another devastating story like that for Republicans. If it's a president, even better. So, but that's not what journalism is. It could be that. And if it's a true story that you can source, it needs to be told. No matter who it hurts, no matter which party gets the positive or a negative impact, these stories need to be told. I'm 100% on board with that. Now, what I'm not on board with is, again, manipulation, gaslighting, telling half-truths, and entering that journalistic back room with other fellow journalists with the intention of trying to help one group and hurt another group politically. That's not journalism. That's not even what I do on this program. I tell you my opinions. I'm an opinion, not a columnist, but an opinion guy. I'm an editorialist. I tell you how I interpret the news. I tell you my opinion of the news. You can take that or you can leave that. There's times I tell you I don't know what to think about something. You can take it, you can leave it, whatever. It's analysis, it's opinion, it's commentary on what is going on in the news at the intersection of politics, culture, and faith. That's what I do each and every day. I have been on this program and I told you, I said I'm not in the media. Now, are there people that listen to this program or watch this program? Absolutely. Are they consuming the commentary and information? Sure. Are they challenging it, thinking about it critically? I hope so. Do they trust me? I certainly hope so. But see, it's interesting to me, the media, the legacy media, or even cable media like MSNBC, they want you to believe that they're unbiased so that you trust what they're telling you. And then they give you a very, at best, a very skewed perspective. And at worst, it's downright manipulation and gaslighting. And they're proud of this. They're proud of this. When you think of a true journalist, you should not even know their political affiliation. You shouldn't know what they think about an issue. That's why I'm not a journalist, because I'm going to side ideologically with people who are talking about advancing constitutional conservatism and limited government. Now, if they're out of line, I actually think I do a better job. I think I'm fairer and offer more genuine criticism of people who are quote unquote on our side. That's not what I do. I try to talk more about ideas, but when I think an idea that's being pushed by the Republican Party is wrong, I've been very critical of Republicans. In my mind, I've been incredibly critical of the radical left and the Democrats that have empowered them. But I extend the olive branch to Democrats on a regular basis, to liberals on a regular basis. I just had someone ask me this the other day, having a conversation about, I guess you would say they didn't know if I hated they hadn't really listened to the program. They listened a little bit. Explain, what would you do if Trump did something really bad or wrong? I said, I wouldn't just blindly follow. There's been things I've said on this program that I don't support about Trump. It's not much, but I've said it. I've said it on here. So, but I'm not in the media. If I was in the media, you wouldn't know what I thought about an issue, because that's what a journalist does. That's what a good journalist does. Presents the information. Here's what one side is saying. Here's what the other side is saying. And then people can go through it and decipher that information and come to their own conclusions. We have hardly any of that today. Everybody wants to be an opinion writer or someone who's an editorialist or who's just involved in commentary like what I do here. And I understand it's a little different. It's a lot different in many ways. I'm not a journalist. I'm not here to give you the news. I'm here to make the case for conservative principles. I'm here to make the case, when we talk about things of faith, for the reliability of the scriptures, for not that they need me, don't misunderstand, and for Jesus. I mean, that's what I'm on here doing. And it's not because of any nefarious reason. I believe these things. I believe these things so much that I want other people to believe these things. But it wouldn't be admirable if I came on here and said to you, I'm going to give you the facts. I'm going to give you the facts. And then I tried to just give you the facts that furthered one side of the argument, while at the same time saying the other side was Satan's spawn, and then pretending like I was being unbiased and not trying to get a desired outcome. See, there's nothing admirable about that. So, it's with that being said, so a journalist should be telling us what's going on. They should be citing their sources. They should be making sure that they're getting information that is reliable and true. And in the case where there's an argument about an issue that's happening in culture or in our nation's capital, they should present what each side has to say about it. Or if there's multiple sides. But that's not what they do. There's very, very little of that. I think Catherine Herridge is a good journalist. There's others too, but I have to pause and think really hard about who I consider truly a good journalist. There's not many out there. So with that in mind, MSNBC, it's supposed to be media. MSNBC can have their leftist commentary people if they want. But media and commentary should be separate. It should be different. It shouldn't be mixed together. Doesn't mean that someone on the journalism side can't interview one of your opinion people. That's not what I'm saying. But you can't mesh the two. These things should be held separately. And MSNBC can have a bunch of liberal commentators, but at least give us unbiased journalists. But they don't. Now, with that being said, here we go. DailyFetch.com. MSNBC star Jen Psaki admitted that her left-leaning network's viewers expect negative coverage of President Donald Trump, and that's exactly what the network delivers. Psaki acknowledged to Puck's media reporter Dylan Byers on the Grill Room podcast that the network's audience turns to them specifically for negative coverage of Trump. Here's what she said. We're going to talk about what the opposing party is up to in terms of Democrats and she's talking about MSNBC. We're going to talk about future leaders and things. And we're also going to talk about Trump, and it's typically not going to be positive. I don't think, this is again Jen Psaki, anybody watching expects it to be positive, right? There is not like a North Star thing written on a card and everybody does it slightly differently. That's fairly the vibe. So, article goes on to say here, Psaki said her bosses had not instructed her to appeal to a broader audience by featuring more Republican guests. I have not experienced this, like you have to move to the center, you have to have Republicans on, you have to be more moderate, she said. Every show kind of has a North Star, but the vibe is kind of under the same umbrella. So in other words, we know you're all pushing in the same direction at MSNBC to the left. We're not going to demand that you try to be journalists. And again, if you're not a journalist, then that's fine. But don't pretend to be an unbiased journalist when you are a person engaging in commentary, opinion, you're editorializing. And it's amazing to me how the average American has lost their ability, or maybe they never had it, to ascertain between these two things. It's hard to tell the difference if you don't know what the difference is. You know, we live in a world today that doesn't like to define words. People act like words, we should all understand what someone's meaning without it actually meaning anything specific. Take the word woman as the best example for this. You could also use the word recession. Democrats deny recession, redefining it, in fact, during Biden's term in office, but it means something different when Republicans are in office. It means something to be a woman. Because see, here's the thing. If it didn't mean something, why do we have the word? Right? I mean, the way that words work is that we're trying to communicate something. We're trying to communicate what an object is. We're trying to communicate an idea. We're trying to communicate something that happened. But the word is designed to go from the person telling the story and be received by the ears of the person listening to the story. And then that person who listened to the story understands what the person talking was trying to convey. There's a meaning. There's a definition. If we didn't have definitions for words, why do we write anything down? I mean, I guess you could say we could write stories down, but why do we take the time to write down laws? If words don't mean things, why are we so detailed and precise with the words we use in legislation? Why did the founders write the Constitution and the Declaration? They're trying to convey ideas. They're trying to communicate things, and they're assuming that you have an understanding of the words you are reading. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense to you. It would mean nothing. It would be like going to China, for those of us who don't know Mandarin, and looking at a page with Mandarin characters on it, and there's no meaning to us whatsoever because we have no idea what we're reading. That's how the left wants us to view things, because when we define words, that means that there's truth. There's objective truth. The truth is this word means this. And they don't like truth. Truth is a sticky thing. Truth is exclusive. If we're talking to a group of real women, then we're saying anyone who's not a definition of a woman isn't in my intended audience. I'm not speaking to you for a moment. By the way, I don't know if you saw the sound or the clip. Nancy Mace was at a campaign event, and a trans woman, and by the way, if you're confused by that, I'm here to help. The word trans, if you ever hear trans anything, just use the word fake. I know this upsets people a lot, but trans means fake woman. Trans man is a fake man, so they're a biological woman. That's all that means. Just insert the word fake and you'll understand the meaning. And I'm not trying to be mean to people who are struggling here. I'm trying to give the people who have a desire to understand what words mean and what culture is trying to push us towards. I want you to understand it in the simplest ways possible. That's it. I think just substitute the word fake for trans, and you'll understand. But there was a trans woman who came up to Nancy Mace after she had spoken and had some sort of a beef with Nancy Mace. I think Nancy Mace's, this individual said husband, but Nancy Mace says, I'm not married. So I don't know if it was even a boyfriend. Maybe it was just some male colleague that was with her, but used the phrase babe to talk to somebody. This person didn't like it. And Nancy Mace basically said, do you like the word, I'm just saying it, so I'm not here to, she said, do you like the word tranny? And then the person, the trans woman who's a man, his voice went from, what I want to say, it went from trying to imitate a feminine voice, it dropped like a bass voice. And he started cussing at Nancy Mace, and she kept saying that word repeatedly. I'm not saying that was the best way to handle it. I'm just saying that's what happened. And so there are reasons that we have words. There are things that are true. Truth is exclusive. If something is X, if I say only X applies and Y comes along, then Y doesn't apply. This isn't complicated. And when it comes to journalism, media, true journalism is not political commentary. So that's about all I want to say about that for now, because I really want to get to this conversation on Dwight K. Schrute's podcast, which I'll get to here in just a minute because I've got to wrap up this segment of the program. Before I do that, though, my friends, let me remind you, MyPillow, they got a big allotment of sheets, bed sheets. These are Giza Dream Sheets, Percale bed sheets. We use the Giza Dream Sheets. They're incredibly comfortable. I've not used the Percale bed sheets, but I know customers like those sheets as well. But this allotment was supposed to be received by some big box stores for whatever reason. That didn't materialize, so now they've got a bunch of extra sheets that they're giving to you at wholesale cost. So, if you go to MyPillow.com, you can see this special when you use promo code TODD, T-O-D-D, my name there. MyPillow.com, promo code TODD gets you the wholesale prices. This is not going to last long. When they're gone, they are gone. By the way, there's free shipping options available on these as well. MyPillow.com, promo code TODD, or if you prefer, you can pick up the phone and call 800-615-2015, 800-615-2015. Quick time out, my friends. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back here, my friends. I want to get to this quickly because I don't have a lot of time. This is a couple of minutes long. I mentioned that Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight K. Schrute on The Office, he's got a podcast, and he had Stephanie Ruhle from MSNBC on the program. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'd forgotten this until I started preparing for this morning, but there was back in, it's been a while, 2017, 18, something like, actually, it might have been 2019 now that I say that. I had been invited onto Stephanie Ruhle's program. She was doing, I'm pretty sure it was Stephanie Ruhle. She was traveling the country at the time. This is when I'm trying to remember this year. Actually, it would have been, I don't know the year. But it was, she was doing a college campus tour, and she was going to be at Purdue University, which, Purdue's probably an hour and a half for me, I guess. And we were going to do an on-campus thing. There was a hurricane that hit the country that day, and everything was superseded by hurricane coverage, so I didn't go. But I just remember, I had an experience previous to that by being on Fox News, and I remember just the comparing and the contrasting of the experience of that. It felt much different communicating with the Fox News producers versus MSNBC. Of course, I knew that, and I knew that they didn't really want to give someone like me just an opportunity to articulate and explain my thoughts and positions. That's not what MSNBC does. In fact, Jen Psaki admitted that with what I shared with you last segment. But anyway, Stephanie Ruhle, is invited to sit down with Rainn Wilson here, Dwight K. Schrute, on his podcast. And they're talking about the media. And I want you to listen to this. Listen to how Stephanie Ruhle tries to explain why people don't trust the media, my friends. That being said, why is this? Let me refresh that. So she is trying again to blame this really on President Trump and Elon Musk. Just listen
40% of Americans don't trust mainstream media. Why is that? How did we get here?
Listen, we are seeing a huge loss in trust of all of our institutions. It's the media, it's medicine, it's banking. It's a huge problem because when you think about democracy and all of these pillars, they need to stand tall. They need to stand strong. And sort of losing that trust is not by accident. It's by design. If you remember when
Let me pause that. I find it interesting that she uses the phrase that I use when I talk about. Actually, she's saying the exact opposite of what I say about these pillars. I call them the 7 pillars of propaganda. That's what we have in this country today. We have the 7 pillars of propaganda where the left has taken over these important pillars in science, in academia, in government. That's just 3 of them. And they use that to further their political agenda, to further their morally bankrupt worldview and ideology. I would go as far to say that this is irrefutable. I think this is as clear and obvious as the noonday sun. This is why I say, by the way, that we're fighting a multi-front battle here in this country. We are dealing with not just who our elected officials are, but we have to fight, say, the bureaucratic state, for example, the folks that DOJ has helped to expose here. We have to fight the people who are leading academia. We don't have to fight academia in the sense of its true sense of the word, where you're pursuing higher intellectual thought and discovery and all that sort of thing. We have to fight the people who are running it and who are manipulating it to get the desired outcome that they want. Same is true for science. I love science. I'm kind of a nerd, to be quite honest. But I'll be candid with you. The people that run science want to use science to further the leftist crazy agenda. Same is true with the media. Same is true with big tech. Same is true with woke business. They are all over the place, these radical leftists, in these positions of power to manipulate, to gaslight, when necessary, to camouflage themselves like a chameleon, to blend in and look normal until it's time to operate behind the scenes. See, right now, it's not a good thing to be out there as a full-fledged leftist. You are, right now, there's political pressures to have these folks removed from positions where they are forcing this crap down the throats of the American people, down the throats of our children in schools, and the American people have had enough of this. And so now they're in chameleon mode. But make no mistake, when the time is right, and there will be, I hope not, but there will likely be a swinging of the pendulum back to where circumstances will be such that these folks can operate back in the broad daylight without any fear of repercussions and consequences. And so, but she blames it, all this stuff, the distrust for the media, on basically Trump. She said, look, people don't trust the media, people don't trust government, people don't trust science and medicine. Well, why is that? See, she wants you to believe it's because Trump and Musk have made it look like these folks can't be believed. Let me ask you this, just on a personal level. If you are thinking about, if I say to you, who's someone you don't trust? Who's someone you don't trust? Who's someone you think is a liar? Whoever comes to mind, it doesn't even matter. But ask yourself this question. Why do I think this person is a liar? Do I think that they are a liar because other people have continually told me that they're a liar, or do I personally have experience with them lying to me? Because it's different. You see, sometimes people can say someone's a liar and people just go along with the narrative without asking why or getting direct evidence for that. By the way, this is why when you hear me talk about some of these fallacies in logic, one of the fallacies in logic, in argumentation, and talking about having these debates, one of these fallacies is the fallacy where we simply follow the voice of authority. Someone cites an authority. Well, the FDA says this, and suddenly that's supposed to shut us up because the FDA is the authority, supposedly, on the matter, but they're only the authority on the matter insofar as they are believable and trustworthy to be an impartial authority on the matter. You might have heard, speaking about this, that these food dyes are going to be taken out of American food by 2026. Well, how did they get in there? Why were we not concerned about this before? Why did they have the authority before to be a trusted source of authority? Or did they abdicate that trust? Did they violate our trust, abdicate their responsibilities, and simply peddle things or not oppose things that were harmful to the American people? You see, there's sometimes a reason to not trust somebody. Sometimes we absolutely can get caught up. We're human beings. Someone says he's a liar, he's a liar, he's a liar long enough, then that means we assume, sometimes erroneously, that someone is a liar. But I've got plenty of experiences watching these people lie to us on a regular basis. I mean, I'm just right now what pops into my head when I think about the media. I think about Brian Williams. Remember when he made up the story of being shot at in a helicopter? Remember this story? I'm reminded of not Peter Jennings, not Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather. Remember the phony National Guard story on George W. Bush? Remember the way that the media covered, remember Dr. Fauci, the way that he manipulated science and his authority to tell the American people you have to stay 6 feet away from people, later telling us that number just kind of magically appeared. There was no scientific backing about it. Remember whenever all the previous studies in science found that masks did not prevent the spread of the flu virus? I know that it was a different virus. In fact, one of the studies showed that wearing a mask actually contributed to the flu virus spreading more rapidly, because when you wear a mask, you're more likely to touch the mask, adjust it on your face, then get the germ on your hands, thereby spreading it through what you touch, not just when you cough. Those were all things that we knew. They abused the authority. My point here is to say, don't blame the people who call out the lies, Stephanie. Why don't you defend the things that's just scratching the surface. So when we don't have trust for them, or we find Doge uncovers that we're spending money on a Sesame Street program in Baghdad, don't tell us that that's legitimate. Explain to us, why that wasn't the case. You can't, because it was the case. Or explain to us, I guess you should tell us why it's legitimate. After I think about that, tell us, explain it. Don't tell us that we suddenly can't trust our government. We absolutely can't trust. Our founders would have told us not to trust our government, my friends. I got to take a break here. Quick timeout. I'm at the end of the segment here. Got to take a break. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of today's program, hour 2 here. Quickly moving along. Friends, let me tell you, we are nearing the end of our offer to provide a lifetime membership to you, to the Inner Circle. It's just $99. You'll be a lifetime member. It's going to launch later this spring. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, some video calls, some just a bunch of bonus content, things behind the scenes. This would be a program designed for people who are, looking to do more than just intellectually engage with the subject, actually to become better conservatives, not bitter, as I like to say. Be better, not bitter, And to advance the conservative movement, talk about some of these things in more detail in a more intimate way behind the scenes as a member of the Inner Circle. $99 lifetime membership. ToddHuffShow.com/join is where you can go. ToddHuffShow.com/join. Go there to sign up. The offer won't last much longer. There will be other ways to join, but the lifetime membership is coming to an end soon. So let's go back to this interview. Stephanie Ruhle with Dwight K. Schrute here, trying to explain and articulate why the media is not trustworthy, or why people think the media isn't trustworthy. She defends a lot of the media, and to Dwight K. Schrute's credit here, he presses back on this. Here we go.
If you remember when President Trump was running the first time, Steve Bannon once said the goal is to blow the whole thing up. And so I think that you've got mistakes made or things starting to slip, while at the same time there's a concerted effort to destroy the media.
But wait a minute. What do they want to blow up? Right? They don't want to blow up a free press. They want to blow up the manipulation, the gaslighting. Stephanie, she'll continue here.
The media, the news media is, in my opinion, the last line of defense of holding power accountable.
So where was it in Obama?
Right, and you had a bit of a perfect storm, right? President Trump won, and tons of people were shocked or angry or frustrated, and they're tuning out. And at the same time, you have the Elon Musk media machine, because they want you to leave traditional media and they want you to go to X, which is a bastion of misinformation where there is no fact checking. So it's a perfect storm.
Listen, this is crazy to me. When I go to X, it's like going to, I'm from a small town. It's like going up to the Freiburgs here in my town, and you start chatting with the guy who shares his opinion. Should we ban that because it's not fact checked? What in the world are you talking about? I mean, people can get information how they want. Obviously, there's places to get good and bad information. And dare I be candid as to say, in my humble opinion, Stephanie, one of the worst places to get information is on your network. Anyway, she continues here.
Of people saying, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm tuning out, I'm disconnecting. And then you have a force pushing it. But even in the last 2 weeks, what we need to do is just cover what's happening in America. Right? We have to cover
50 years,
Democrats trying to figure out what their lane is and how they're going to get back on their feet. And we have to simply cover what this White House is doing. And I think if we do that, right, there's that saying, trust is gained in raindrops and it's lost in buckets.
Well, you've lost
and
in
it's
buckets
not
for sure.
Yes, you're not incorrect that the media has lost trust.
This is where I would push back.
Yes.
When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration, and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the environment's, look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem. And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
I would push back on immigration.
Okay, that's the gist of it, right? So she's saying it's Trump, it's Elon, that's the reason people don't trust the media. I say it's because of the media, Stephanie. Don't blame the messenger. I would love for the media to do its job. I've been talking about the media doing its job on this program for nearly 10 years now when we started. You guys could have done your job at any moment. By the way, in totally related news, I don't have time to get into detail on this, but I think it's important to at least mention this. This is I just have a little over maybe a minute and a half here. Freebeacon.com, they knew 30 times Democrats worried privately about Biden's decline before the debate fiasco. Some feared Biden was losing his grip as 2021. Why was I the forerunner in this? I thought Biden lost his grip before 2020. It was clear to me. How in the world can some guy on the radio from a tiny town in central Indiana have more awareness? And the same is true for you, by the way. I'm just the one that I can speak about myself here behind the microphone. But How do we know more about this than the people on the inside? They knew. Mark my words. They knew, the Democrat Party power brokers knew about Biden's lack of cognitive ability when they chose him and forced him upon the Democrat Party electorate during the primary process in 2020. 100%. They didn't care. These books now are being written. They've been published, where the people behind the scenes who could have told us at any time, who, by the way, the media knew this too, they were covering and lying for this guy since at least 2021, I think long before that. This is one, I can't get into this now, but you get the idea. If you want to be trusted and not have buckets of trust poured out, as she said, then don't lie to us and gaslight us about our previous president and then act like you're concerned suddenly with this one. I've got to go, my friends. Have a great day. SDG.